the government needs to be more responsible in the information that they're sharing, just in general, to talk about the risks that exist.
Tonight, plans to start up a new type of nuclear reactor in New Brunswick is causing concern among many residents.
Unfortunately, there are elected officials that abuse the trust that was reposed in them by the membership.
And we meet a lawyer that started an organization that fights for band members' rights. Good evening, I'm Dennis Ward. Welcome to APTN National News. We begin in Ottawa, where at today's COVID update, the Prime Minister shared some promising news on the vaccine front going into the summer and fall. But he also pushed the need to get fully vaccinated and continue following public health guidelines to avoid a fourth wave. It was announced Canada will receive 9 million doses of the Pfizer vaccine in June, with 2 million per week until the end of July. Canada's health officials also announced Pfizer is now approved for kids aged 12 to 18. Prime Minister Trudeau said having more people vaccinated will allow the loosening of restrictions.
Once cases are low and at least 75% of people have had one dose and 20% have had a second, you can look forward to outdoor things like a small get-together in a backyard, going hiking, or sharing a meal on a patio. This fall, once 3/4 of eligible Canadians are fully vaccinated, we'll be able to do more of the indoor things we miss, whether that's watching sports in person or a dinner party in a restaurant. That's what a 1-dose summer and a 2-dose fall could mean for you and your family.
First Nation in the Yukon is boasting after government statistics revealed it has the highest COVID-19 vaccination rate in the territory. Champagne and Ajax First Nations in the community of Haines Junction currently has the highest vaccine rate of any First Nation in the Yukon. 88% of eligible residents there have received their first dose, and 81% have received their second. The First Nation says community efforts like offering transportation, a strong social media presence, and holding Q&A sessions have helped its success.
We just had this whole fulsome support apparatus behind a very, very consistent message. And that was, we're not forcing you, we're encouraging you, but we're also really encouraging you to find out for yourself, make that decision on your own. And I think how we did it, it was a very structured, a very proactive approach to it, and I think that really also helped out.
Iqaluit has been under restrictions for a month now, ever since the Nunavut capital recorded their first case of COVID-19. There are 63 people with the virus in Iqaluit right now. 171 people have recovered. Our Kent Driscoll checks in on the community.
Iqaluit Mayor Kenny Bell had just moved into his new office, and it closed as soon as it opened. COVID-19 hit the Nunavut capital in April, and the capital city moved to bare bones staffing.
We've closed down all our facilities, and we are operating with bare minimum employees working in the office. And we're, of course, continuing our essential services, which is fire, ambulance, and water and sewage delivery and pickup.
The Nunavut government has been saying for a month that partying is one of the major causes of the virus spreading in Iqaluit. Residents were encouraged to call the police to report parties. The thing is, some residents called RCMP and were told to call the city's municipal enforcement department. As late as Friday last week, the Premier was forced to take to Twitter to correct the Justice Minister. Justice Minister George Hicks, one of the MLAs from Iqaluit, told concerned people to call the city. The Premier had to tell people to call the police.
I'll tell you, it's been extremely frustrating, Kent. It's been about 11 days now that I've been, in talks with the minister about specifically about the call-in number. So we want the people to be calling in the RCMP. The Dr. Patterson, CPHO, has said call the RCMP.
Despite the request to call the RCMP, no individual in Nunavut has been fined for breaking COVID-19 health regulations. Essential businesses have stayed open the best they can, but even the bigger retailers are having trouble keeping up. The smaller ones just hope to survive.
Yeah, we've been pushing the government for more business support, more small business support. But I'll tell you, Arctic Ventures and Northmart, they're not doing that well either. They're short on staff right across the board. The last time I heard, Northmart was 26 people short.
Even if Iqaluit hit 0 cases tomorrow, it is very unlikely the school year ends with students back in the classrooms for the second year in a row. People planning their summer vacations now don't know if they'll be able to leave and return to Iqaluit safely. The Leafs and the Canadiens are playing in the playoffs. It should be the most fun at Iqaluit bars in generations. Instead, Iqaluit watches the daily case count and wonders just how much longer. Kent Driscoll, APTN National News, Iqaluit.
The forest fire season is heating up. In Saskatchewan, the city of Prince Albert declared a state of emergency last night because of fires on the northeast outskirts of the city. Power has been out for over 8,000 people in the north central area due to several transmission lines being damaged by the fire. The fire started yesterday afternoon. Water bombers, ground crews, and helicopters have been working to contain the blaze, which has grown to over 5 hectares. Today, more than 35 homes were evacuated on the outskirts of the city, including the Men's Healing Lodge. The director of operations with the Prince Albert Grand Council says the men from the lodge were taken to the Prince Albert Penitentiary for the time being.
We have been working with our emergency services to ensure they're safe in the event of fire getting to them. We're also working with the province of Saskatchewan to do that as well.
Perry Bellegarde's tenure as National Chief of the Assembly of First Nations is coming to an end soon. And with candidates like Alvin Fiddler already announcing a run at the job, there were rumors about whether former MMIWG National Inquiry Commissioner Michelle Audette would be running as well. APTN put the question to her last week during the Echequan Commission hearings in Trois-Rivières.
Yes, I was approached a long time ago, or I was asked if I would consider. I was honored, to be honest, but there's other people that will do an amazing work or amazing job, and not for me.
An investment by the federal government into a new type of nuclear reactor is stirring up criticism. And some Indigenous leaders in New Brunswick are speaking out against the $50.5 million project. APTN's Christopher Reed has more.
Recycling facility.
Moltex Energy Canada is getting $50.5 million to develop what the nuclear industry calls a small modular reactor, or SMR. The federal government has taken a shine to the idea of nuclear reactors that would generate less than 300 megawatts of electricity, and the government is pushing for SMRs to be developed and deployed to power northern communities and remote industrial operations, as part of the plan to get Canada to net zero carbon emissions.
Well, I don't feel very good about it, to be honest.
Hugh Akagi is chief of Passamaquoddy Nation at Skutnik. Passamaquoddy Traditional Territory includes New Brunswick Power's Point Lepreau nuclear generating station, where Moltex has been contracted to develop its SMR.
You paid that money. If you pay tax on anything in this country, you've just made a donation to Moltex. If you're not concerned about $50 million being turned over to a corporation for a technology that does not exist, I hope you heard me correctly on that.
Akagi says New Brunswick Power has presented information to him about what they are doing at Point Lepreau, but he says he's unlikely to ever give the SMR project his approval.
Until I can have an assurance that the impact on the future is zero. I don't want 200 years. 200 years is still 7 generations. I want zero impact.
Wallastock Grand Council Chief Ron Tremblay has similar concerns and issued a resolution in March calling for nuclear development at Point Lepreau and elsewhere to cease. But Moltex Energy Canada's CEO Rory O'Sullivan says his company's small modular reactor design will recycle spent nuclear fuel from full-scale reactors.
Instead of putting it in the ground where it'll be radioactive for very long periods, we can reuse it as fuel to create more clean energy from what was waste. We can't get rid of the waste altogether, but the aim is to get it down to about 1,000th of the volume of the original long-lived radioactivity.
Despite Moltex being in the early stages of their project, O'Sullivan is confident, though he says he used to see nuclear as more of a problem than a solution.
When I graduated as a mechanical engineer, I saw that nuclear is too expensive, has the waste issue, has a potential safety issue. Well, actually, with these innovative new designs, you can potentially have nuclear power that is lower cost, cheaper than fossil fuels. You can deal with, you can get much safer solution using innovation, and you can potentially deal with the waste. So that's when I personally came around to maybe we really need to look at nuclear a bit more.
Gordon Edwards doesn't share O'Sullivan's confidence. Edwards is president of the Watchdog Group, the Canadian Coalition for Nuclear Responsibility, and works on a radioactive task force with the Anishinaabe Nation and the Iroquois Caucus. He notes the Moltex SMR plan involves a preliminary step of dissolving spent nuclear fuel in molten salt, and there lies an issue, he says.
What happens when you dissolve the solid fuel in a liquid, in this molten salt, then all of these radioactive materials are released into the liquid, and it becomes more dangerous to contain them, because a solid material is much easier to contain than a liquid or gaseous material.
Nuclear skeptics like Edwards and Akagi have an ally in Parliament with Fredericton MP Jenica Atwin of the Green Party. Atwin is also speaking out against the planned SMR project at Point Lepreau.
My basic premise is that the government needs to be more responsible in the information that they're sharing, just in general, to talk about the risks that exist alongside whatever benefits they're kind of, toting. And right now we're only hearing that it's the greatest option. This is how we fight climate change. It is it's cheap energy. And I'd have to disagree.
If all goes to plan, the Moltex SMR could be operable by about 2030. Christopher Reed, APTN National News, Winnipeg.
Time to step aside for a quick break, but stick around. There's much more to come. Welcome back. A nonprofit organization based in Fort McMurray, Alberta, is helping band members from across the country get accountability from band leadership. APTN's Chris Stewart spoke to Rob Louis, the founder of the Band Members Alliance and Advocacy Association of Canada.
Rob Louis has a law degree and is working on his master's. He has seen too many band members not get their rightful share. Sometimes it's because of elected chiefs or council members misusing funds. Louis, who now calls Fort McMurray home, decided to try to help. He recently began the Band Members Alliance and Advocacy Association of Canada, working with other lawyers to take bands or individuals to court.
Unfortunately, there are elected officials that abuse the trust that was reposed in them by the membership. At times, I'm seeing it is a single act of financial impropriety. Other times, it's been decades of systemic wrongdoing.
Band members with concerns can contact Rob at bmaac.org to report improprieties.
We receive, on average, every week about 20 to 50 calls from band members across Canada. Most of the time, these band members just want to be heard. So I will set aside, 15 minutes to half an hour just to listen to them. And at times, there's nothing that BMAC can do. But at the end of it, the band member is just happy that somebody listened to them.
Although still new, the organization has made an impact.
In only a matter of a few months, we've helped band members in British Columbia, Alberta, Saskatchewan, Ontario, with primarily with election matters. We also have helped band members obtain their per capita distribution when Chief and Council decided to deny them.
Louis says until more bands are fully transparent, the courts are an option.
The purpose of the Band Members Alliance Advocacy Association of Canada isn't to just to sue chiefs. What we're trying to do is provide a way for band members to exercise their voice and their rights at the same time. And it looks like the courts are the only place that band members can do this.
Rob Louis will be seen on the May 21st episode of APTN Investigates for Trust or Profit, Part 2 by John Murray. Chris Stewart, APTN National News, Edmonton.
A new project is looking at how the dispossession of Indigenous lands nearly destroyed Indigenous economies. Cashback is the latest red paper from the Yellowhead Institute. It's about the value of Indigenous lands and restitution from the perspective of stolen wealth. For more, we spoke earlier with one of the co-authors, Shiri Pasternak. Shiri, thanks for being with us. Can you tell us about this latest red paper, Cashback, what it's all about?
Absolutely. Every year, the Yellowhead Institute publishes a marquee report that is a central issue that communities are grappling with across the country. And last year we produced a report called Land Back that was about land restoration movements. And this year we published for our red paper Cashback, which really builds on Land Back, but is more focused on stolen wealth, which is a process that is linked to the process of dispossession that we described in Land Back, but it more closely looks at the impacts on communities of the destruction of their economies and the kinds of restoration efforts that are necessary when those livelihoods are damaged by colonization.
Why did the Yellowhead Institute feel this was a necessary project to take on?
Well, I think the Land Back movement has done extraordinary work in looking at how Indigenous jurisdiction is really central to restoring Indigenous governance and legal traditions and really repairing the damage and challenging colonization. But Cashback takes, I think, a complementary approach in that it looks at a lot of the solutions that Canada has proposed for demands for Indigenous self-determination have been things like devolution, like a policy that returns Indigenous jurisdiction over certain sectors of their lives, but really never provides the resources necessary in order to really provide fulsome child welfare programs or education programs and so on. So we really wanted to look at the way that what we call fiscal warfare is used to perpetuate colonization, even though on paper it looks sometimes like there is some kind of decolonization or recognition process going forward.
What are you hoping people take away from this?
Well, the report is organized into 3 parts, and I think each part provides an important diagnostic and vision for what cashback looks like. The first section of the report is called How Canada Got Its Economy, and it really looks at and documents how intergenerational wealth was accumulated by private companies and by Canada through the dispossession of Indigenous lands, and really tries to show that that really started this massively unequal Canada between First Nations and the Crown. The second part of the report is called Follow the Money, and it really provides, we think, the most comprehensive analysis that's publicly accessible about Canadian policy on funding relationships. You know, they're so convoluted and so technocratic. It's almost banal to talk about this stuff, but Art Manuel used to say, on the other hand, you don't need a doctorate in economics to know who's going to be rich and who's going to be poor if you look at the distribution of land in the country. So we look at how funding agreements and fiscal relationships and policy have really masked over what is the ongoing theft of Indigenous lands, territories, and resources. And in the final section called How to Get That Cash Back, the main takeaways there are we present really just a handful, 10 different visions that different Indigenous people, communities, groups, organizations have, where they are already continuing the work that's been going on for generations for the restoration of Indigenous economies through treaty-based funding proposals, through litigation around treaties, through abolition movements, youth movements involved in trying to restore resources to keep communities safe outside of state structures and so on. So it really provides lots of seeds for how cashback could bloom as a movement.
Well, Cherie, it is more important work from the Yellowhead Institute. The layout looks great and everything. Appreciate you taking some time to speak with us about it.
Thank you so much for having me.
Time now for one more quick break. Stick around, we've got more to come. Welcome back. Let's take a look now at our photo of the day. 10-year-old Winston Hooker Ridgen of Winnipeg sent us a photo of his 1-year-old tabby cat named Manouche. Taking a nap in the sun. Manouche is Machif, the language of the Métis, meaning cat. For the chance to be our next photo of the day, send in your photo to share@aptn.ca. Let's see how much sunshine there's going to be in tomorrow's weather forecast. Starting on the East Coast, 12 for St. John's, 15 in Halifax. 6 with snow in Inukjuak, rain, and 7 in Kuujjuaq. 30 for Montreal, 27 with showers for Chibougamau. 21 and rain in Sault Ste. Marie, showers and 27 for North Bay. 21 with rain for Thunder Bay, cloudy, and 25 in Sioux Lookout. -4 with snow in Churchill, 20 and rain for God's Lake. 25 with showers for Winnipeg, 1 degree cooler and rain in Brandon. 20 for Regina, 13 in Saskatoon. 21 with rain in Meadow Lake, 2 with snow for Buffalo Narrows. In northern Alberta, 5 in snow for Fort McMurray, snow and 3 for Fort Chip. 15 in Medicine Hat, a chance of snow and 8 for Edmonton. Showers and 14 for Vancouver and Victoria. 14 in Prince George and Dease Lake, 15 for Fort Nelson. 13 in Old Crow, rain, and 15 for Whitehorse. +5 in sunny in Yellowknife, 13 for Norman Wells. -6 in Sax Harbor, +1 for Polituck. -7 in Chesterfield, 8 below in Baker Lake. -3 with snow in Resolute and Arctic Bay. Award-winning Cree journalist Connie Walker is our guest on Face to Face tonight. We discussed the blatant racism she experienced early on in her career and the positive change that has taken hold in the recent years with the way Canadian journalism covers Indigenous stories.
I feel like what has happened in the last 5 to 7 years is something I couldn't have even really imagined when I was a young journalist. You know, it's been this incredible transformation in terms of, I think, not just the volume of stories about Indigenous people in Canada, but also the kinds of stories. And it's been, I think, a huge transformation and one that has been so exciting to get to feel like I've been a part of.
And you can catch our entire interview with Connie Walker in less than a minute's time. That is all the time we have for your APTN National News for this Tuesday. For news anytime, visit our website, aptnnews.ca. I'm Dennis Ward. Thanks for tuning in. Have a great night.
Right, and not touching the grass. So it's nothing, they're usually waiting for us to not eat it.